Hi, I'm Dave Kahle, and I'm just wondering if you're focusing your business and your career on gaining significance through excellence. In 2014, Hobby Lobby, which was a Christian-owned company, won a lawsuit at the Supreme Court. The lawsuit objected to the Obama administration mandate that employers had to pay and had to provide free contraceptives to all their employees. Now that violated the religious convictions of the owners of Hobby Lobby, and they filed a lawsuit objecting to that. The court held that the rule violated the religious freedom of the company and struck it down. The company did not have to pay the fees and the fines associated with that. Now, Christian people around the country applauded that victory, seeing it as a victory for religious freedom, freedom of expression for everyone, not just Hobby Lobby. While it was that, it was also an example of a deeper principle at work, and that's this. Excellence in business brings with it a disproportional amount of influence. Influence in the community and influence on the culture. Let me repeat that, because I think it's really important. Excellence in business brings with it a disproportional measure of community and cultural influence. You know, I discovered this principle as a young man. In order to work my way through college, I worked at a pretty high-end men's clothing store. And even though I was a little bit less than full time, I became the leading salesperson, number one salesperson in the store's 5 outlying stores. And I really didn't realize what that meant, but what it meant was that I had more influence. And not only influence, it brought recognition, it brought access to important people who made decisions, and influence. And as an example, at one time, a famous designer, clothing designer by the name of Ole Cassini, we carried his line, and he came to town, and of all the salespeople in the outlying branches, I was the only one invited to the cocktail reception, and it was because I was good at my job. I had achieved some success, and with that success came recognition and access and influence. When the buyers, the various clothing buyers, would visit the store, they made a point of talking to me. I was even invited to talk to the company's president, invited to go downtown the office and have a conversation with the company's president. Now, at the time, you know, I was just focused on making a living, trying to make enough money to get myself through school and, you know, keep body and soul together. So I was really at that time oblivious to the influence that came with that. It was only in retrospect, looking back, that I saw that. But as I moved through my career, I discovered that principle, that business success engenders recognition, access, and influence. I found that to be true over and over again. My status as one of the top salespeople for the company that I was with meant that the company president, you know, when the company president wanted to spend a day with the field salesperson, he picked me. And when the company was considering a new product line, they ran it by me. Now, I've seen this principle. Now, it wasn't me that I'm talking about. It's the principle. I've seen this principle applied over and over again. You know, as a sales consultant, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of companies. And I've noticed this, you know, the principle is at work there in the level of the individual salesperson. In other words, when I come to town and interview people, it's the top salesperson who's on the list to be interviewed. You know, the top salesperson is the guy who represents the company to the outside consultant, me. When major decisions are made by the company, you know, like maybe Salesforce compensation, they run it by the top salesperson. And this is not just one. This is the standard throughout the industry. I found that not only to be true for individual salespeople, but also true for companies within industries. Now, as a professional speaker, I'm often involved in national trade associations. And, they'll pick speakers and things like that for their convention. And I have observed that the leading companies, those companies that are leading the industry, are the ones who staff those positions, all those boards and conferences and so on. It's the leading companies who make the decision about the speakers and the conventions and the locations and all that. It's the leading companies who are on the boards and committees and make the decisions for the whole industry association. So the same principle is true for businesses as well as individuals, and that is, if you are excellent in your business, with that excellence comes recognition, access to people, important people, and influence disproportional to what you might expect. Hobby Lobby, for example, would not have had the ability to stand up for its rights if it were a struggling one-store operation. It was because it was successful, I suppose hundreds of stores, a successful, growing business impacting its industry, that it had the wherewithal and the influence to impact the culture and the community at large. Now, there's a lesson in that for Christian business people. We are called to be a light in the darkness and salt to season the communities in which we find ourselves. What better way to do that than to be excellent in our careers, be industry leaders in our business, and thereby gain recognition and access and influence. If we want to be able to influence the culture, and we do, we're commanded to do that, what better way than to achieve excellence in our business, in our professions? Influence through excellence ought to be the strategic goal of every Christian business person and every Christian business. When business excellence intertwines with transparent Christianity, the impact can be enormous. I remember hearing Zig Ziglar speak at National Speakers Association, which I was a member years ago. And Zig began he had a keynote speech at a big dinner at the annual meeting. And Zig began with a personal testimony. He gave his personal testimony. He acknowledged Jesus Christ, gave his personal testimony, just a short, 4 or 5 minute thing, and then launched into a memorable keynote. Now, that was decades ago, and I still remember it. I don't know how many other people were impacted by that, but there were hundreds, maybe even 1,000 people in the audience. Some of them were impacted by Zig's excellence, achieving excellence in his endeavor, and thereby gaining influence through that. Now, we can't all be another Zig Ziglar with his influence and his platform, but we can have a similar impact on the communities and the culture around us. Imagine the impact on our culture, on our economy, on our political environment if every industry were led by a Christian organization. Imagine if the movers and shakers within every profession were the Christians who had earned that position through excellence in their jobs. If that were the case, we could frame the discussion nationally. The media that is so twisted today would have to acknowledge the conversations that we created because we were the industry leaders. Our commitment to individual responsibility, to kindness and fairness, and integrity and honesty in business would shine through and impact millions of people. Millions of employees, vendors, customers, stakeholders of all kinds would see what it's like to deal with integrity and love and concern for your colleagues. People would flock to learn at our feet. We'd be constantly handling people wanting to come and visit our organizations and learn from us. People would notice and respect our excellence, want to learn from it, and thereby rub off our Christian views and our Christian attitudes and our Christian commitment. Now, if you haven't, by the way, if you haven't read The Good Book on Business, The Good Book on Business, you can get a full discussion of this in The Good Book on Business. Now, there is a world of recognition and access and influence that awaits every Christian business person, every Christian business. Yet we won't realize it until we see that we see that potential and choose to pursue it. Sadly, the vast majority of Christian business people are just stopped at the very first step in that process. They don't see the connection between their business and their role in the kingdom. One of my acquaintances, let me give you a couple examples. One of my acquaintances was the owner of a small financial services company. But he was very successful, and he rose to the top. I mean, he was respected and rose to the top of that profession. And he could have used that in a more positive way to influence the kingdom, and instead he chose to use his increased amount of free time to invest in hobbies and outside interests. That's too bad. That's too bad. He missed an opportunity. But that's just one example. Here's another, and this is very common. Again, one of my acquaintances was a very successful business person, built a very successful business, and sold it. And sold it when he was in middle age. And the reason he sold it is because that's the worldly ethic. That's recommended. You build a business and sell it and cash out. And that's what he did. It was really unfortunate. I thought it was unfortunate because he missed an opportunity. He was building a business based on Christian principles. He really was. I mean, he was a devoted, a committed Christian person. And he was building a business based on Christian principles, and he let it go. That was too bad. He could have used the excellence he was attaining in his business to influence hundreds, if not thousands, of others. So you see, from my experience, most Christian business people are stopped at the first step. They don't realize that their business can have an impact for the kingdom. Every Christian business, every Christian business person should make the connection between excellence in their job, excellence in their business, and the influence and recognition that comes with it. We could influence the country, the world, if we would see that connection and begin to foster it. Okay? That's it.